We found a statue of a woman down by the river. When I was 13 years old, my cousin and I found a golden statue by the river. We spent most afternoons down there. Eloise, or Lou as everyone called her, would be skipping rocks, or hanging upside down from the branches, while I looked at fish and bugs and leaves under my magnifying glass, referring to my books and writing down notes. I was picking some nice flowers to take home to my dad, when I looked over and saw a spark of gold sticking out of the mud. I called Lou over. It was half buried in the mud of the riverbank, and Lou used her water gun to squirt the dirt away so we could see it better. It was life-sized woman with a rose-covered veil over her face so only her mouth showed. Her head was downturned and cocked to the side, and her arms were down by her sides, the palms up. It kind of looked like she was shrugging. Lou squirted the base with water so the carved engravings showed. "Oh, it's in a different language," I said with disappointment. "Or hieroglyphics. I should bring my book on Egypt over." At that age I was deeply in my mythology phase. Lou sent me a funny look. "What are you talking about, Frankie?" she said, and I blinked. The carvings, that had been just symbols before, were suddenly readable English. "Hold my hand and make a wish," it read, and a loopy signature that said, "Rose gold." "Maybe it fell off a circus train or something," said Eloise. "You know, one of those creepy fortune-telling thingamajigs you see at carnivals." I watched as she got out her phone from her backpack to take a photo. The logical part of me said the words changing had just been my mind playing tricks on me. The animal part of me was completely unnerved. "I should run from this thing as fast as I could." "Gonna make a wish?" asked Lou with a grin. I flinched as she walked towards the statue and took one of its hands. "Jesus, don't touch it," I said at once. My heart felt like a swollen lump and a fresh cold sweat had broken on my forehead. "Oh my God, are you afraid of it?" Lou jeered. "What should I wish for?" "Well, it is Valentine's Day soon. Maybe I should wish for your dad to find a special someone to have a special time with." "Classy," I replied with a glare. My dad was a touchy subject. I lived with my Auntie Andy, my dad's Sky, and Lou, except for every second weekend when she visited her dad. Lou's dad, Uncle Leith, used to have split custody, but he was a bit of a wreck, so now Lou lived with us basically permanently. Lou looked like a girly girl with her long blonde hair and rainbow dresses, but she was the complete opposite, more gross and wild than any boy in our class. I looked like a nerd with my big glasses and black plates, and was exactly how I looked, at the top of my class in everything but My dad, Sky, had an intellectual disability, and as soon as I found that out I went into research mode. I learned that it meant he had an IQ under 70, that intellectual disabilities are either mild, moderate, severe or profound. Dad's intellectual disability was mild. He could look after himself and didn't need a carer, but he had trouble understanding a lot of things. Auntie Andy and Uncle Leith had written a book that made enough money for them both to comfortably live off. My dad made a whole lot of teas, fragrances, soaps and bath bombs that he sent off to fancy shops that overpriced them. My mother was a mystery. Apparently my dad had just arrived home with me one day. Lou questioned why we were all so certain I even was my dad's daughter. "He could have just kidnapped me." She said it in a half-joking way, but it was odd that all the grown-ups just accepted I was his daughter. I didn't even look like him much, except for our dark hair. "Come on, make a wish, make a wish," Lou said. "You chicken shit." "Come on, what's the harm? It's just a dumb statue." "Monkey's paw," I muttered, and Lou frowned. We were the same age, but she hadn't read as much as I had. "What?" she said, and I shrugged. "Monkey's paw, you know, careful what you wish for, it'll go wrong," I said. "Like in the Treehouse of Horror episode." Understanding crossed Lou's face. "How can meeting a special person to have a special time with go wrong?" she said, "unless it means having a special time with the Grim Reaper." I imagine going back home to Auntie Andy crying and Dad dead on the ground. "I don't know what happened," she'd sob. "He just dropped dead out of nowhere." I felt a flutter of panic in my throat. Lou glanced at me guiltily. "Look, it's not even real," said Lou. "It's so grotty and cheap looking. It's just a bloody fortune-telling thing someone chucked out. I remembered the symbols changing with a blink of an eye to English. Had it just been my imagination? A dull clunk broke me from my thoughts. Lou had given the statue a mighty kick. "Dumb piece of crap," she said. "Come on Frankie, let's just go home. I'm starving anyway." With that, she walked off with her water gun over her shoulder, to the forest path that would take us back home. I lingered, staring down at the statue. It was a creepy thing to find out here in the forest, that's for certain. I didn't like being alone with it. I don't know how to explain the feeling. It just had a strange vibe about it, like thinking you'd seen a dark figure move out of the corner of your eye but then looking to see it was just a coat track. Not dangerous, just uneasy. With that, she walked off with her water gun over her shoulder, to the forest path that would take us back home. I lingered, staring down at the statue. It was a creepy thing to find out here in the forest, that's for certain. I didn't like being alone with it. I don't know how to explain the feeling. It just had a strange vibe about it, like thinking you'd seen a dark figure move out of the corner of your eye but then looking to see it was just a coat track. Not dangerous, just uneasy. Before I knew what I was doing, I was reaching over to take its hand. It was cold, slightly damp with river water and mud. I looked over my shoulder to make sure Lou was gone. Just a stupid statue, like throwing a coin in a wishing well. Just a dumb bit of fun. Might as well make the wish I'd been doing since I was 5 whenever I blew out my birthday candles. I wish. I whispered. I wish I knew about my mother. Nothing happened, of course. The statue just glinted in the morning sun. I wiped my hand off on my clothes and wandered off after Lou. At the end of the forest trail, we ducked under the bar that separated the trail from our dead-end street. Lou and I always got up earlier than everyone else to go explore the river. My auntie had no idea why we got up at dawn nearly every day. "River's not going anywhere, is it?" she'd say. Lou and I always found the walking path got too crowded during the day. Other kids swinging off the branch into the river and drenching my book while I was trying to look up different types of mosses. It was better first thing in the morning. There were still a couple of joggers about but they were quiet so we didn't mind them. Also getting up early meant I got to meet the postie every morning. He was scary looking but cool, tall and muscular with straggly gray hair that hung from the helmet over his face. He delivered my monthly science magazines and sometimes we'd have a chat about it before he got back on his motorbike. As Lou and I trundled over to the front gate, the postie pulled over on his bike. He passed me the morning mail, glancing at my muddy hand. "Digging for worms were ya?" he asked and I snorted. "That's what 5-year-olds do," I said. "I'm trying to find some freshwater mollusks from my latest magazine." "I thought you were looking for moss?" he said. "No, that was last month. This month is mollusks," I said. "Not bad to eat some of them," he said. "Maybe not the ones you find down the river though." "Of course not," I said as he got on his bike and drove off with a wave. I went through the front door that Lou had left open. My dad was curled up in the armchair with his latest knitting project in his lap. He often fell asleep there at night and forgot to go to bed. My dad had shaggy brown hair and big brown eyes and often had a pensive expression on his face like he was off in his own world. Auntie was sitting at the table with a coffee, looking exhausted. My aunt was blonde and blue-eyed like Lou, her upper teeth stuck out and her eyes went in different directions. Auntie did odd jobs around the neighborhood like putting up fences and mowing lawns. The book money meant she didn't need to work but she still did so she wouldn't die of boredom as she once told me. It was better than Uncle Leith who just smoked weed all day and played his guitar on the porch until his neighbors complained. "Hello," she said with a yawn as I put the mail on the table in front of her. "Get some nice flowers for Dad?" "Yeah," I said, as I put the bag at the foot of Dad's armchair. "Just some daisies and bottle brushes." "Nice," said Auntie Andy. Over at the pantry, Lou was climbing the shelves and grabbing as much food as she could get her hands on. "Bloody Nora," Auntie Andy snapped at her and Lou looked around, mouth stuffed full of pretzels. "Get down from there, actin' like you've never been fed." Lou shrugged, grabbing the peanut butter and jumping down. The thump of her shoes woke up my dad. "Morning, Andy said to him. "You need to stop sleeping in the armchair. It'll screw up your back." "Sorry," said Dad, sleepily rubbing his eye. He looked at the bag of flowers on the floor and smiled, bending down to go through it. "Thank you," he said to me. "Wanna see what we found in the river?" Lou said to her mother with her mouth full of food. Andy just shrugged as Lou felt around for her phone. "Come on Uncle Sky, do you wanna see it?" Lou said, getting out her phone. My dad limped over to her curiously. He'd had a bad leg my whole life. Lou tapped for a few seconds and then showed them the photo. I jumped at the loud crashing sound. Andy had dropped her cup. Hot coffee splashed everywhere. Lou stared at her mother in shock. Andy's face had fallen into an expression of pure horror. Lou and I stared with fright as my dad wrapped his arms around himself. His breathing was getting harsh and short. I thought he was going to hyperventilate. Andy stood up, put her arm around him and herded him from the room. Lou and I were left alone in the kitchen. We stared at each other. "What the hell?" said Lou.